Thanks, folks. I'm happy to be here. I'm Carole. I'm codependent. So I've got a lot to unpack in this story. But before I begin, I wanted to say that as I share my story, please be aware of the fact that it's not meant to shame anyone. It's my intention to express my life experience, the conclusions I made, and how codependency developed in my life. So I'll start with the family structure. I grew up with my maternal grandmother, mom and dad, an older brother and an older sister. My grandmother was a Sicilian immigrant. And although my mom and dad were born in the United States, they had many old world ways about them. We were sent to the Catholic schools. I grew up in East Harlem in Manhattan, a long time ago. And Catholicism was a very big part of my life. At around the age of 7, I got the mumps, and I lost a significant amount of my hearing. And I would say it's safe to say it contributed to a large amount of my low self-esteem. The problem was I wasn't provided with any way to navigate my new reality, no hearing aid, no training. And it was, to say the least, very difficult. I think what my mother's intention was to send me to spend some time after my 5 hours at school to spend more time with the Catholic nuns. And I was the only one of my other 2 siblings who spent a great deal of time with the nuns, who treated me very well. They were very patient with me, and I experienced a lot of love. I would say that my brother and sister were protectors of me for the most part. As we moved on in grade school, my sister fell in love with someone of another race. And that didn't go over well with my parents. And she was threatened with being kicked out of the family, so to speak. And a great deal of pressure was put on her to let go of that relationship. Around that time, my sister was also molested by a Catholic nun. To say it had a severe impact on her life would be not stretching the truth. She was very damaged as a result of that. And so my mother's need to protect her, nurture her, really became more of like enmeshed, to say the least. And eventually she wasn't able to stay in school at all. She was not wanted in school because her behavior was such that it could not be tolerated. And so that gave her a great deal of time with my mother. My mother was, what I came to learn, very promiscuous. And I recall learning a great deal about Catholicism and the 10 Commandments. And I remember being home from school one day and seeing some of her behavior around men. And I confronted her, and I must have been about 10 or so. And I told her, what you're doing is adultery. And as you can imagine, that did not go over well. And so that subject never came up again. But my takeaway from that was basically to ignore the reality and not question it. And my sister, as I said, stayed home, cleaned house, never continued in any education, and her self-esteem was greatly impacted. And what they managed to convince her of was that what she needed to do is find a man, tall, blonde, and that would be acceptable. And so that's what my sister did. The first guy she met was a Polish fella, tall, good-looking guy, and they seemed to hit it off. and they got married. And within, I'd say, 6 months of the marriage, my sister and her then husband moved into our home. And for the next 45 years, he never worked, never. And so I think in short order, both mom and dad began to see that it might have been a better idea for her to hook up with the guy that she was in love with, who became a professional baseball player. And I think they were filled with a lot of guilt, and so they supplemented their income, as I said, for many, many years, along with my sister's 3 dogs and 5 cats, an animal lover. And they proceeded to have 3 children. In the meantime, I met, through my sister's first love, his friend, who happened to be Italian. And I knew, based on what I observed, that he would meet with my folks' approval. And so while my sister was playing cozy with her sweetheart, this guy was keeping me busy. And that guy wound up being my husband, my first husband. And he went away to the military. He was drafted at that time. They had drafting for men. And after several years, when he returned, and we were sharing love letters all during that time, when he came home, I got pregnant. And when I think back on that, much of my need for love and family was not what I was experiencing at home. I often felt like I was out on the periphery of the family, functioning. I didn't know very much about what was going on. I couldn't hear very much of what was going on. And so I clinged to what I perceived, as a future with this guy, a family that I desperately wanted. In short order, my little boy was born, and very shortly after that, he moved out, and he moved back in, and he moved out again, and he moved back in. And I'd say for the first 2 years of that marriage, he moved it in and out a good 14 times. And my family, for the most part, disowned me. One, because I was pregnant, and I guess I brought shame on the family. And on one of his trips back home, I got pregnant again. And it was when my daughter was born that he decided he was going to move in and stay home. And it wasn't too long after that I discovered that he was leading a secret life. And his secret life included stealing, indecent exposure, and I would say definitely a sex addiction. It would be safe to say he had a sex addiction. And I think my mindset on that at the time was I just ignored it, because coming from where I came from, that was something you did, you ignored it. And I remember at one point talking to my mom about it, and she thought, well, this is stupid. He's just having a fling. Is he working? So if he's working, that's okay. Your sister's the one with the problem. So basically the value that was force-fed to me was, grow up, this is a reality. And still the knot in my stomach was undeniable. And I might add that every time he went away, there was no discussion about money or how I was going to eat or how was I going to feed 2 kids. And so with a limited education, a hearing impairment, the best I could do was buy a used sewing machine and sew clothes for people. And at least that fed me and my 2 kids. But I had what I would call today a big resentment. And it was percolating. And so life seemed pretty good for about 7 years, until I start getting phone calls from women looking for him, or the police were looking for him, or any number of behaviors that were, that left me scratching my head with an inability to know how to deal with this, know how to deal with what I was feeling. I certainly didn't know anything about boundaries. All I know was something was wrong, and I didn't have a name for it. My son reached an age where he started drinking and drugging. My daughter was not the little girl that I was raising. Everything was spinning out of control. And the smartest move I made was to contact a therapist. And she asked me to bring my then husband and my 2 children in, and we did. And they refused to stay. But she told me, you stay. You keep coming. And I did that. And I went twice a week for about 1.5 years. And I would say that's one of the angels in my life. And I know on my journey, I met a lot of angels in my long journey. And this woman basically put it out in black and white. This is what you're dealing with. And she went out of her way to hook me up with an agency that provided my first hearing aid. And I felt like Superwoman. I could hear. Shortly after that, she sent me to a school, and that even made things a lot better. A lot better. And like I said, I was becoming my own person, and I had an opinion, and I wanted to be heard. And living with this man, he would often cheat on his taxes, and I finally found a voice to say, I'm not signing that tax return because you're not doing the right thing. And his go-to methodology was always, well, I'm going to tell everybody what a rotten, lousy wife you are. And I said, go ahead. And that was a behavior I wouldn't do before. I think because the little bit of time I had to find myself, the little bit of self-esteem I was able to put together, showed me that I could speak up to this guy. I may not have done it perfectly, but I had a little bit of a voice. One of his partners in crime took him in when I decided that I was going to fox out a new church, because I had long ago left the Catholic Church, but I had a deep spiritual need to find a spiritual home. And if I wasn't making him God, there was not going to be any other God. And so he forbade me to go to any church. And about this time, he started getting physical. And he said, if you go out that door, I'm going to break both of your arms. And I put my arms out and I said, go ahead. And that too didn't go over well, but I went out the door. And his partner in crime would come over to our house just about every night. I call him a partner in crime because they had women lined up for every day of the week. And one of the women that my ex was bedding down decided to contact me. And so I confronted him, and he said, I have no idea who this is, And on one of his Sunday morning outings, he would be taking her out to breakfast. Well, what happened that one Sunday morning, I was coming out of the shower, and his best pal showed up at the door looking to bed me down. And I said, okay, I think I've reached a saturation point. This is over. And I remember him coming home for dinner, and I remember looking at him sitting at the dinner table, and I knew, I don't love this guy. I don't even like him. And I told him I want a divorce, and he spilled out many, many expletives and told me to get the hell out of his house. And I said, I will, and I did. And I left at about the 20-year mark. So I had done quite a bit of growing. I got a job. My daughter was in the last few months of her high school graduation. My son was out of school. He was not doing well. His drug and alcohol problem was escalating. And I knew I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I reached my limits. And the people I were working for helped me find a condo. I knew when the house sold that I would get the money, my portion of the house money, and I put it down on a condo, and my daughter was to move in with me. So 3 months passed, and I met someone who was, I would say, sicker than the first guy I met. And fortunately, again, I was able to leave that relationship. But I had quite a bit to learn about myself, because the recurring question in my mind was, why are you picking on all these losers? And I had not heard about codependency at that point. I had been familiar with Al-Anon, although codependency was another thing. You know, I came out here to Arizona, and I landed a really good job with wonderful people. And I met my husband, Geno, at the company we worked for. And that was a beautiful thing, I might add. I don't want to skip over a very important piece of my formative years. When I said my mother was Italian, my mother was more than Italian, she was Sicilian. And it was not uncommon in that day and age, when immigrants came over to the United States, that they had a family here in the United States, and they started another family back in the old country. And that's what happened to my mother. And so my mother was 2 years old when her father left, went back to Sicily, and started a whole new family. That meant that my grandmother had to go to work. And back then, it was considered something to be ashamed of if a woman was married and you had to go to work. But my grandmother had to do that. So the question came up with, and by the way, there was no, you know, all these breaks that we get. There was no help back then. You were considered lucky if your family took you in, which is where my grandmother was. But the question came up with, what does she do with her little girl, my mother? And so she sent my mother to her sister's house. And Aunt Mary and her husband Tom did the best they could to raise her. Unfortunately, Uncle Tom was in the mob. He was a mafioso. He was a hitman. And so if the mob needed someone to be murdered, he complied. His front was a barbershop. And if someone then came in for a hot towel treatment, they got their throat slit, and he was happy to do that for money. So my mother grew up around this, and she was incested by this person repeatedly. And so to say she was damaged was no small stretch, very damaged. And I think for the rest of her life, she was always looking for her dad. And I think that's what contributed to her promiscuity. I don't know that my dad ever knew this. I don't know. What I came to find out many years later, which filled in some of the pieces of the puzzle as to why I was treated the way I was treated, is because the man that raised me was not my biological father. And it seemed to me, in growing up, there was so much about me that bothered my mother. The color of my skin, the way I looked, everything bothered her about me. My mother was a blue-eyed, very fair Sicilian, and I'm not. And so that too impacted my self-esteem, because I always felt like, well, there's something wrong with me. I felt like, well, I don't belong. How else could I have What else could I have concluded based on the realities of my life, the way I pissed her off, not doing anything wrong, just being? So maybe I was a harsh reminder. I don't know. I know that when I approached her about what was the reality of my life, she thought I was being stupid. That it's just a fling. It's okay. Over the long haul, that was not something I could digest, because it had nothing to do with my personal values, which I had to discover over time. I had so much to discover about how I think, how I was shaped, what I believe, how I look, who I am. And that's where I could say that Codependency Anonymous came into my life. I needed to do a lot of work, for sure. And I hooked up with a fantastic sponsor who happened to be a grade school teacher. And she was very patient with me. First of all, before I even say how I even found Codependency Anonymous, I was seeing Geno, but I was very concerned that I was making a mistake. I didn't trust my feelings. I knew I liked him. I liked him a lot. I knew I felt safe, and that was good. That was very important for me to feel safe. But I would talk to my boss about him. I would talk to my coworkers, and everybody said, no, he's a good guy. And he is a good guy. And so our relationship developed, and I started to go with him to his AA meetings. And I was really taken by his intellect and his sense of humor. And I could just be me. I didn't have to hide. I could get angry, but I didn't have to get angry with him. He's a well-rounded man. And by that I mean he's seen some of the bad parts of living in the world that we live in, and came away with a lot of good things to share with a lot of people. So I came to admire him big time. I just want to touch briefly on my son and my daughter. My son will be 55 in October, and my daughter will be 53 in September. And we are estranged. I don't think my first husband, who, by the way, was suicidal when I finally left, which for a big man, a big bodybuilder, there were many times I wanted to punch his lights out. I couldn't do that. And I found through the work that I've done through Codependency Anonymous is that I have a lot of power. I really do. That power was given to me, I would say, by my higher power. So really, it's higher power who's got a lot of power. I just rely on him a great deal. I'm currently dealing with an estrangement, a long-term estrangement from both my son and daughter. That's been very difficult, and I have good days and I have bad days. My grandchildren do not know me. It's fair to say my son and daughter are extremely abusive. And whereas there was a time when I would ignore that and be what a mother does, that's not acceptable anymore. It's just not. And so we've parted ways. At this point, they do not seem to be open to any dialogue. They just simply have the expectation that I forget about what they've done and said, and what they've done on things that impacted my finances, because the person that was steering their behavior was none other than their father. So I literally have put them in God's hands and hope for the best for them. But, you know, I have a new life. I'm very happy with my life. I'm in a healthier marriage today, as I've touched on. There's a lot of humor. I'm a lot more stable. I tend to be on the serious side. Geno does not. He's lighthearted, and I need that. I need that in my life. And I hope that what I've learned through my life experiences help people, because there is help. We don't have to stay. I mean, I think my journey has been severe, and yet I've come out on the other side. Geno and I have been together for 23 years. That's a beautiful thing. I've met some beautiful people on my journey, women who've struggled with self-esteem issues. And I think it's a fair thing to say that I had a love addiction too. And I had to, as the movie says, snap out of it and look at the reality. And to treat myself with dignity and respect. That's been the bottom line for me. It seems I made so many other people God. I have a God of my understanding. And everything he asks of me is for my good. For my good. I don't want to forget that. So let's see. The thing I want to conclude with is that you know, when you take the journey through the steps, you get real and honest. You know all about yourself, or as best as you can. You come to the point where you can see both sides of the equation. It's not that my first husband was evil. He's damaged, just like I was. He was my childhood sweetheart. I knew what he grew up with. The difference is I had the humility to say, I need help. And I needed a lot of help. He's not there yet. He's still causing a lot of problems for a lot of women, and he's almost 80. My children, they're on their journey. They're raising their families. My grandchildren do not know me. That's okay. So my husband, Geno, taught me a long time ago to accept people for who they are and where they are. And that's where they are, and that's okay. I'm not God. God's still working in my life, and I know he's working in everybody else's life. So there's much to learn. Be patient with yourself and treat yourself with love. So that's all I've got. I think I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to have Geno join me.
Here we go. Hi, everybody. In case those of you who don't know me, I'm Geno, and I'm codependent, and
I'm Carole.
And of course, this is Carole. You know, she's my sergeant major, my house sponsor, and things like that. But I guess I'll just say real quickly about me and relationships prior to doing this. I don't think I knew much. I'm winging this, okay? But about my relationships, I look back by doing the steps, had me reflect back, and I was able to see a lot of patterns in my relationships. And there was almost I mean, I had a lot of different ones. I was married a couple times prior to Carole, and of course, a lot of you know, I don't know, I'm also an alcoholic and addict, and that stuff doesn't bear, help with marriages and relationships and things like that, because you're never present. And I didn't know how to be emotionally present in a relationship, because I didn't even know what my feelings and emotions were, and whatever ones I felt, I would avoid and try to stop or circumvent through chemical interventions and other things. But as I look back, I saw that I was constantly recreating my family of origin over and over and over. And those of you that don't know me, I come from an alcoholic family, And there's a lot of dynamics that in those kind of families that I was recreating, and they were reappearing again and again. And I often believe that people that experience pain and trauma in their childhoods tend to unknowingly, and believe me, I didn't know, unknowingly recreate that in their adult lives, recreate that suffering and pain over and over again, because it feels like home. It's familiar, and it doesn't seem, even though I hated it, I was almost like I was almost drawn to it, drawn to that sort of situation, and maybe even creating them myself. And that was over and over again until I started looking at that. I remember once I got into recovery, which was quite a while ago, I thought that, okay, you're going to take this substance issue out of my life, and now I'm going to be everything's just going to be skippy wow, and I'll be everything will be wonderful, and hell, I'll probably grow hair and get tall and really get cool, you know. And none of that stuff happened. I mean, you know, I was able to not be arrested anymore, and I was able to not get in a bunch of fights anymore, and I was able to know what I did the night before. But my goodness, in terms of interacting with others and everything, it was I had no clue that I didn't know how to do that. You know, how would I know? You know, I didn't have anything else to compare it to besides that stuff. And then once I started Coda, when I moved out here, I did it for a while. Let me tell you how I got back into it again. I did Coda for a while when I first moved to Phoenix. Okay, it was in the late 80s. Okay, and I was doing that, and I was doing AA and all that stuff. And I did it for a while, and then pretty good. I had sponsoring people and stuff like that. Yeah, for the beginning of it, and Coda was pretty new back then. And then I kind of drifted away. And then what happened was Carole started going. Somebody mentioned to her she'd go to a Coda meeting. I says, you ought to go. They're pretty cool. Like as if I didn't need it, right? And so she went, and I have to tell you this. She went, and there was these two guys in the meeting, at this meeting in Scottsdale, I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, that did not get along, right? And Carole would come home and tell me about this meeting she was going to, and she said, these two guys, I think I'm getting scared. I think they're going to fight in this meeting or something, you know? And I have to be honest, I didn't go back to Coda and say, yes, I'm going to improve myself and go to Coda. I went, all right, I'm going to go watch this. I want to see this. You know, I was drawn. My character defects brought me back into Coda in that way. And I went because I wanted to see these guys throw hands and maybe have a good story afterwards. But I did it, and I thought, oh God, you need to be here. And I felt that in terms of my recovery, this is like graduate work. For the other stuff was just the setup for me to understand that I needed further stuff. Just like this stuff helped me to be, those of you that don't know my story, I have PTSD as well from my time in the Marine Corps. And this was able to let me get the help for that stuff, in that it set me up for that. And looking at these at relationships and everything like that for me is I was continually recreating that. A lot of controlling women, because my mother was the oldest in an alcoholic family, so she was very controlling, and that's their role, the hero, to taking care of everything. So I noticed that somebody tried to control me. I thought that they really liked me. Okay, so you come tell me what to do. I think you got hot skivvies for Geno. Okay, and so you know that's the way it was. I would do that. I said, whoa. And of course, having low self-esteem, what I felt about the situation didn't matter. As long as I thought they liked me, that would be the the magnet for me to go to somebody, and I would ignore all red flags. Oh, okay. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to say about relationships real quick before we get into questions, okay? One of the things I noticed that helps me, that I had to learn from these meetings, is to develop empathy. I didn't have empathy very much in me. I didn't. It was also disdained in the environment that I came from. It was being vulnerable and that sort of thing was looked down upon, and weak. And so I had to develop empathy, and that is basically putting myself in the other person's shoe and try to feel what they're feeling, or understand what they're feeling, understand where they're coming from, walk a mile in their shoes and things like that. And that made it easier for me to connect, is learning empathy and that sort of thing, and being able to develop that within myself. And couples, I believe, that can work on developing better empathy with each other, it will strengthen the relationship. And I think it has for me, from my side of it. When one partner can understand the other partner, where they're coming from, arguments and issues can resolve quickly and easily. Okay. And one thing I want to say is real important. I had to give up my desire to win and be right, and replace it with a desire to discover the truth and what's real. And the truth, honest to God, will set you free. The second was controlling my emotions during stressful situations. And I think that for that was always something I had, because I would always get angry with anything that happened, anything that would, that was my way of it. Anger was my umbrella feeling. And so I would, if you scared me, you didn't see a frightened Geno, you saw an angry Geno. If you hurt me, you didn't see a hurt Geno. I only knew how to do anger and all that. That was just it. It was my go-to feeling. And I had to learn to look at those things and be real with my feelings, and then not turn them into a reactionary outburst, and to do that. And if you add stress to me acting out in that way added stress to an already stressful situation. So if I let cooler heads avail, I might find enough room to finding room for me to vent, finding room for her to vent, and that sort of thing. And then we can discuss things rationally to see how we can make this work better. There's always a place in the middle. I found with us, there was always a place where we can both agree to be and be comfortable. Rather than to get bent out of shape about marital problems and take it out on each other, working through issues together in a respectful manner can help save the relationship and make it stronger over time. And here's a good one. I tend to focus on negative, or everybody has a narrative, and I have a narrative, and it's one of them is Geno's no good, and everything's bad, and the life sucks, and then we die, right? And so I have to challenge that narrative, and sometimes I focus on negative, okay? And the use of positive illusions, so to speak, for lack of a better word, and that would be, it's like positive self-talk for the relationship. In other words, to learn to, now I could focus on every negative, what I would deem negative thing that she does, or what Carole does, or everything like that. And everybody has their things. Like she might have a thing about the way I laugh or something that's pretty irritating, right? And we all have things that the other people don't like. But, however, there's a whole lot of other stuff that's really good about this relationship. and really good about her as a person and a human being. Is infinitely good. And that is where I often try to counter that predilection I have to looking at the negative to refocus on the positive. And I think if we all spend a little more time focusing on the good in our relationships, we'll be in much better shape. After all, nobody's perfect, certainly not me. And a lot of times the things that I get irritated about are more about me than it is about Carole. And maybe she's shown me a part of me that I don't want to look at. And that happens a lot of times. So don't fool. I think that don't fool yourself into thinking love is easy. Is an easy thing. It's love is an active noun, like struggle. Okay, and it means that I have to work at every day at accepting somebody where they are at that time, and turn around and look at myself and see what that is about me and why I'm doing it. Because a lot of times it has to do more with my story than what's going on, my baggage than what's going on. I have to check that out. And I'm not talking about self-abandonment either. Okay, I have to learn about self-abandonment and when I'm doing that and when I'm not. And if love was easy, there wouldn't be. I think somebody wrote down, says there's 1,867,843 songs about love. If it was easy, there probably wouldn't be that many songs about the difficulties of love. Okay, because it is a complicated thing, and it's something that that everybody has to look at and struggle with. So I guess that's about it. And one other thing I'll add is that people have talked about this before. You guys, those of you who know me know Carole and I are really different types of personalities and people. Okay, and the interesting thing about that is that I found that I don't want her to be like me. Okay, there's a lot of times I'm pushed in that, but I'd rather her be the way she is, because we both discovered through different types of personality things that the way we are, the things that I'm not very good at, she excels in. The things the things that she's not so hot at come naturally to me. And we're both kind of like that because we're pretty opposite. And I try to focus on the complementary things about that, because it does work better. You know, together we're a formidable unit. Okay, and I know we're really different. You know, and one of the guys in the other program that I'm in said that somebody mentioned to him, they said, "Boy, Carole and Geno are really different." And he says, "Wonder what's that like," or something. And he said, "Picture George Carlin married to Mother Teresa." Okay. And I went, you know, and but I always thought that Carole doesn't look a bit like George Carlin. Okay. So anyway, that's my last joke for the day. I'm done. I'm done running my mouth.
Oh, you guys are great. You do make a real pretty Mother Teresa.
It's the hairdo, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause, everybody, and lots of love from our heart. Woo! Oh, thank you guys. Oh yeah, people are clapping. You guys can do that little emoji and your reactions if you'd like. So what we're going to do now is open this up for sharing. You are going to raise your hand, and it's going to be up in the participants box. Hover over your name, click on raise hand, so on and so forth. And once again, we will be uploading this onto our Facebook page. So you can watch it later if you'd like. And then we are working on getting it to our website and onto our YouTube. But again, there's only a handful of us doing all this service. Okay, so I'm having some hands come up. And so what I'm going to do is call on Erica. And what I'm going to do is unmute you, Erica, and you can go ahead.
Thank you. I actually mistakenly raised my hand, but I am actually very privileged to be in the meeting. I live in Denver, Colorado, and with the help of Zoom here, I am just privileged to be around all of you. And I just wanted to say that I've had a lot of issues around codependence, but with the help of CODA, it's one day at a time. And I'm grateful for CODA. I'm grateful for the meetings. I've lived in different areas of the country throughout my life, and CODA is always there. So since I did raise my hand, I thought I'd give that quick little share. And I thank you so much during this difficult time. To be able to have this is so appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you can please mute yourself because I can't find you anymore. All right, Roz, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead and share.
Hi, my name's Roz, and I just want to say I'm in Florida, and one of the gals from the CODA meeting gave me the information today, so I got to call in and feel very privileged to have heard you both share. I was very taken by your talk, Carole, because I could relate a lot to a lot of the things that you went through, and feel very blessed to hear that the two of you found each other. I have a really question that's kind of like maybe not appropriate, but I'd love to know how the two of you met.
Oh boy. Shall I tell or you?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is pretty funny. We met at work, and actually the way I really met her is I interviewed her for a job on my staff in a job interview. She was interviewed with me. That's how I met her, and via the interview. I mean, that's the first time I really saw her. I think I might have saw her once before, but I noticed her. But anyway, that's how I met her. And then later on, I was teaching a class, and she was in my class, and one of my somebody was in the students, and I think you were arranging it, weren't you? Yeah, she was kind of arranging the class. It was kind of like a team building thing, and then we did that, and she was like a student, I suppose. And then we were kind of got together and talking about that, and then I took her to lunch. I didn't hire her, by the way, after the interview, because I was afraid of some sort of sexual harassment thing, and no, not really. But as it turned out, one thing led to another, and we were pretty soon a couple. We were smitten. Yes. Yes, it was pure hormones. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Kayla?
One sec. I'm sorry. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, my question was for Carole. I actually had two questions. You mentioned that when you were in a relationship, it was always about what the other person wanted. It was never about what you wanted. So my question was, were you able to fix that before you met your husband or after you met him? So I guess it makes me worried a little bit about myself, and I can totally relate, because I just feel that codependency, it's such a cruel condition that you never ever fully recover. It's like you're constantly working on yourself. It's a constant process. So do you think that your codependency has improved after you met him, or were you able to heal yourself, you know, in order to welcome him in your life? That was my first question.
I think for me, I had to learn how to get angry because I'm going to be 75 this year. Women in my generation did not show their anger. They didn't know how to express anger. So I had to give myself permission to be angry and to show it appropriately. And then I channel that anger in a more constructive way in my life. Codependence Anonymous just helped me to figure out the why of my anger. Channel better ways of handling myself in situations. The topic of boundaries.
I'm gonna pause her
The
because
last thing on earth that I ever expected would be to come to a point in my life where the 2 children that I raised are outside of my life. That's a very difficult challenge to deal with. So to say that I've improved, yes, big time. Does that answer it for you?
Yes, my second question was, what advice would you give us as women? Because everybody talks about loving ourselves and improving ourselves, but how do we live in a society that tells us on a daily basis that, you know, in order to attract a man, you have to look a certain way or act a certain way. So what advice would you give us as women to improving our love for ourselves?
Well, that's where it begins. I think when you become authentic, you become who you are, whatever that looks like. If you're going to attract a man that doesn't like any part of you, you don't need him. You don't need him. You be who you are and how God made you, flaws and all. You be who you are. You learn, number one, to love yourself and respect yourself. Because if we're not doing that, we're making men gods. There's only one God. You got to find him. And you got to put him on his throne, as they say. That's what I do.
thank you. All right. Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane and I'm codependent. My question is there a specific tool that you learned in CODA that helped you achieve authenticity or anything like that?
Who is that directed to?
Oh, I'm sorry, to both of you, to Carole and Geno.
Okay. Well, you want to take that?
No. Authenticity, yes, okay. I think that the ultimate in recovery is being totally authentic. You know, a lot of times, I would always never be authentic. I would always be what I thought you wanted me to be. And I think once my self-esteem improved, okay, once I started developing a relationship with myself, okay, and liking who I was, and more than anything, accepting who I am, I was able to be me and allow that. And if that wasn't okay with you, well then, okay, that's fine, because I might as well be me, because you might as well be yourself, because everybody else is already taken, right? So just go on and be yourself, and the right people, the people that it matters that you're authentic to, if it matters to them, then they don't matter. And the people that it doesn't matter to matter, are the ones that should matter in my life. And I you know, if I'm not accepted, well then, okay, that's fine. You know, and you don't have to. But I need to have my comfort with me. And I found that the more authentic I am, the more comfortable I am in life, and the more serenity I have in life. And my serenity is not dependent on whether you approve of my authenticity, I guess would be the right word. Anyway.
The way I'll answer that is one of the things that I can recall doing repeatedly was compromising my values. And that put me in a world of hurt because I was abandoning myself to make somebody else happy. And, you know, with what I grew up around in terms of what my mother modeled, that's not who I was, not at all. And I'm basically a very traditional kind of person. And that suits me just fine. It seems to work in our relationship. I know if we have any conflict, I can go to Geno and say, we need to talk. And I can express my point of view. And he's an intelligent man. He understands what I'm trying to say, although I must admit sometimes I do get long-winded. And he prefers for me to make it, okay, come to the point, come to the point. So all the character defects that I've uncovered can be found in the steps. So with that, what I can say is get to know how you are wired. That's your roadmap, those steps. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Okay, hi Barbara.
Hello, it's me again.
Hello.
Thank you guys for sharing. Oh my gosh, what powerful messages. And Geno, I have a question, that something that hit me. You said, when I'm being controlled, that means you like me or something like that. That's what you thought it meant. And I think I, along with a lot of people, are in that boat. And so my question to you is, like one of the people previously asked, did you get rid of that, or not get rid of it, but like work on that before you got in your relationship, or is that still lingering in your relationship? I'm sure it's not a one answer fits all for everyone, but I'm just curious to hear yours.
Okay, that's a good one, because I that's something I noticed later by working this stuff. And you know, when I was talking about seeing patterns in my past and everything, at any rate, the controlling thing was one thing is I'll tell you is I would think somebody cared about me because I knew my mother loved me and my mother was controlling, right? And so I just associated control with love. Control doesn't have squat to do with love. It has to do with control, right? And what I did was, what I really noticed is I don't like people trying to control me. Just because I thought they liked me because they control me didn't mean I really liked it.
Exactly.
I was always uncomfortable in that situation because being controlled means I have to be compliant. And I don't like being compliant. However, I would abandon myself sometimes to be compliant, and later on take it out in other resentful ways, passive aggressive and all that stuff, which doesn't actually work to the you know, wasn't good for relationships, you know. So you know, like that. But the controlling stuff I don't do it. It doesn't happen anymore. It just kind of, once you're aware of it, you know, you're screwed, man. The shit don't work anymore. Okay.
So you're able to put a boundary up.
Don't fly anymore. You know what I'm saying? I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm not doing it. You know, I don't want that anymore. You know, it becomes a red flag. The red flags used to attract me. You know, hey, show me a dumpster fire and I'm ready to jump in. Okay. You know, so, you know, I'm ready. You know, that was my, my love siren was somebody was a dumpster fire, you know? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Red flags look like flowers to me too. I understand.
You know, Barbara,
Thank you.
I wanted to add to that my first husband demanded respect. And the belief system I was operating under was the man is in charge, you're merely a woman, because that's what I grew up around.
Right, right.
In this relationship, he doesn't demand respect. He commands it based on who he is. And so he's coming from a different place. We're coming from a place of equality. I no longer have those belief systems operating under how, you know, in the background, so to speak. I'm coming from a place now where we are equals. We can communicate, and thus he doesn't demand anything. He commands it because of the man that he is, and I too for the woman that I've become.
So do you you've been working on that as well before you got into this relationship? Not
Yes.
not necessarily like, oh shit, this is what I got to work on now because we're together.
I'm always unraveling stuff I need to work on.
Yeah, it was before I was in therapy. I did therapy. My second marriage was a shit show inside of a dumpster fire. Okay, and
I can relate. I can relate.
and
I'm sorry.
okay, so I had done a lot of therapy coming out of that, and that's what really chased me into the realm of looking at codependency, you know, and that, and so I had been becoming more aware of it. I just have to look and see how it shows up in my life in many nuanced and varied ways, and I still discover different ways. These different characteristics show up in my life and in me with in my interactions with others, you know.
Well, thank you too for your honesty, and thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
There's no graduation, by the way. We never get to flip the tassel and become Captain Recovery and stuff. In my view, it goes on and on. Let's get happy in the journey.
Thank you, Barbara. All right. Alicia. Alicia? Okay, she's not there. We'll mute her again. And Jackie.
Hi, Geno. Hi, Carole.
Hi.
I love you guys. Your story is so powerful, Carole. I'm very grateful for both of you and for all you teach all of us. I had not really thought about the whole looking at both sides, and Carole, to hear you so generously speak to your ex-husband's where he is. I mean, that just shows the health. And I had never really thought about that with my ex-husband with so much compassion. And I think because when I don't feel heard, I'm certainly not going to think about the other person's point of view. So I think there's growth in that area that I need. Here is my question. So you guys have a lot of years in program, many, many years. And you were just saying, Geno, about no destination. We never arrive. But I want to hear what you guys do to maintain your program, both individually and as a couple.
Well, Jackie, it's good to see your pretty face. I make prayer a very important part of my recovery. I read all that I can about codependency, how it expresses itself in people's lives. I sponsor. I attend meetings. I particularly enjoy going to open AA meetings, although I'm not alcoholic. I love to see recovery in alcoholics because it drives home the point that there's a God operating in this world, and the miracle of recovery is very evident there. And that's what I do. How about you?
I think, of course, I attend meetings and do the things that some of the things that Carole mentioned. I think I really believe I'm kind of, maybe it's my personality or something. I'm pretty spontaneous type of a personality. I'm not really, that's one of the ways we're different. Carole's very planned and everything, and I'm very structured, and I'm pretty flaky, I guess, is what you could say. I'm the kind, yeah, I'm not real organized and neat. I hang socks on doorknobs and things like that. And, and she's very structured and organized, you know, which is an interesting dynamic between the two of us. But I find I learn a lot from my sponsees. And there's one of the things I say a lot is I teach best what I need to learn the most. And that's the truth. And usually, a lot of times, it's something I'll be struggling with in my mind, silently, and I'll do my codependent salute, you know, and you know, in my total role of martyrdom, and I'll be suffering with it. And one of my sponsees will call me and tell me something's going on. It's the same damn thing. And then I have to tell them what I should tell myself. It's just funny how the universe works that way. And I believe that that each of us, if I can say this without crying, each of us is the instrument of each other's healing. And each of us is the universe's instrument for that. And we get vulnerable and we're intimate with each other and share our souls with each other and our pain. And somehow there's a healing from that. And it's just a magic thing that happens, and it works both ways. I don't think that's why when this 12-step stuff started, the guys that started, one guy started by looking for somebody that he could help because he knew that would save him. And these guys saved me over and over and over again. And I need to do it. Keeps me okay with me, and it I don't know. I feel a connection to the great neutron in the sky, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's enough out of me.
May I ask a follow-up question? Is that
Sure.
okay? I don't want to take too much time. This is probably a totally codependent question. But you both mentioned individually your work on your program, not really being in a relationship right now. I'm not having been in a relationship other than leaving my husband through the power of another program. As I'm looking forward, hopefully, to a healthy relationship, how does this interact? Both of you are in program. You know, I heard your individual paths. Do you feel a path together on your program? I would like to hear you speak to that, please.
Well, in short, I love Geno. I love everything about him. I like his sense of humor. I like being with him. And we don't do anything special. I think what's special for me is just spending the evening together when the meetings are done and watching a movie together, or having an in-depth conversation about what's going on in the world. That I enjoy. We don't really fight. Occasionally we have conflict, but we enjoy each other. We have the same values, we're on the same path, and I think we complement each other. So I wanted to add one other thing. As most of you know, I have a voice disorder. And about 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with a neurological disorder where I lose my voice, sometimes for extended periods of time, where I can't talk. And I've gone years when I just couldn't talk. And this guy was willing to learn sign language, which I had to learn because I'm hearing impaired. And he learned it. And that's how we communicate. So when the hearing aid comes off and the voice isn't working, my communication with him is with my hands. And he's willing to do that. That's a huge sacrifice for him. And being an extrovert, he needs somebody he can communicate with. And that's a challenge. But we do it. And if that doesn't speak to love, I don't know what does. Good time.
Ooh. I think what helps, actually, I believe that conflict helps us. We have conflicts. And I want to say this. I believe this is from that famous recovery book, As Gene Sees It. I believe that conflict is normal. Couples are supposed to have conflict. Everybody's different. And I think that if there's a couple without conflict, there's a couple with secrets. And a couple without, and if you're in a relationship and there's no conflicts at all, somebody's lying. And somebody's probably got some resentments. Okay? And so it's, that's part of the honesty. It's part of the, I believe that we work things out by setting boundaries and talking about things. When I set a boundary, or when Carole sets a boundary, she's not telling me what to do, and I'm not telling her what to do. You know, I'm telling her who I am. A boundary should be an intimate interaction of expression of who one is. Okay? And that, what happened, that the thing was, is incidental. This is me in that situation. And if I can do that, okay, that, those sort of things, and if she does that, it's more of a, it cements things better for me. And I think those things bring us together. Another thing is, I want to say is that a lot of you guys know me. Well, anyway, I'm pretty hard on myself a lot, you know, because that's just part of my dysfunction, is this low self-esteem, and I verbalize it a lot in here with my self-talk, and a lot of times externally as well. Now, if she catches me doing that, she jumps in my shit big time. Okay, you're being hard on yourself. Da 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 da. You know, she gives me the, you know, she'll give me the codependent handshake. You know, and shaking her finger at me, and so I have to watch that. But one of the things is that she's, the way we see each other and the way she sees me, for sure, she points out things in me that are, pointing out things in me that I didn't know that were good, that I didn't know I had and didn't believe I had. And it's a things to me that like something that because if you told me something good about myself, I usually, first thing I think is, well, if they really knew me, they wouldn't say that. Okay, I don't, either that or boy, did they screw up, that's not me, and something. But she's helped me realize that that I am okay, and that I am worthwhile, and that I do matter. And I don't think I could do that on my own without you and the Sicilian princess here.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on. So I'm gonna unmute you, Alicia. Let's give this one more go.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi.
Hi,
Carole
Alicia.
and Geno, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited. I just adore you two. So what I had two questions. One was just a quick, like, do you ever find yourself getting meeting fatigue? Because I know you guys are just so dedicated to the programs that you're involved in. So that was my first part of my question. But the second one is kind of for both of you. So I can definitely relate, Carole, to the concept that you mentioned earlier about just questioning myself on choices of partners given disappointing past experiences and losing myself repeatedly trying to force a fit and basically work both sides of the relationship, thinking that that made me lovable and, you know, that was loyalty and dedication. So I guess, like, how long did it take you to settle into your relationship with Geno? How did you come to heal that questioning of yourself when you were doubting? How do you know when your doubts are intuition to run away because it's a bad fit versus you're just questioning yourself? I definitely have questioned often, am I fault finding because I'm scared, or is it appropriate? Am I intuitively picking up on an incompatibility? Because, you know, I can definitely relate to the whole, like, what's wrong with them if they like me thought. So those are kind of two things that I found myself wondering.
Well, Alicia, what I found for me was safety was my #1 priority. And I felt safe. And I remember describing it to some of my gal pals at work. Well, what's your relationship like? And being Italian, we think of food a lot. Can you attest to that? And I said, well, you know, it's like eating a good meal. He satisfies me. That's how it felt. And that's how it's been. And as far as getting tired of going to meetings, yes, sometimes. And then I do what I need to do to take care of myself, especially if I can't talk. Then it's difficult because I want to, but I can't. So, you know, I'll do something. I'll play the piano. I'll crochet or sew or read. I like to, I have a reading meditation I do every night. And I just take care of myself, whatever that looks like.
Meeting fatigue. I think that, I don't know, I'm doing more meetings now than I did before the pandemic. I guess because it's easier to Zoom it, and I'm doing them in all kinds of places. Palm Springs or something, I had to do a talk or something, and things like that. So it's, it keeps, I don't know, I'm Irish, so I like to hear myself talk. So that kind of, you know, and time flies when I'm the only one doing the talking. And that's part of the deal too. So I don't mind that. But sometimes it does get difficult sometimes. But I've learned that I can't drift away. Okay, it's dangerous for me to drift away. I must stay connected. I've learned the hard way not to do that. The problems that come from me drifting away from this. One of the things I know is that this stuff, like it says in the beginning, well, both the things, my addictions, you know, and my codependency are deeply rooted in me. Okay, and they are loosening up their grip, but it's taken a while. Maybe it's because I'm a little slow-witted or something. But I know that if I'm away from this positive message, this positive energy, that I will forget it, and it goes away, and I'll go back to the way it was. It has to be replenished, and there's always new. I mean, it's not like I'm done learning, even though I've been doing it a long time. I'm not. There's always something to learn, and I always get it when I least expect it. Okay, it's one thing about recovery is it's a self-discovery thing, and a discovery of self, and a discovery of a higher power. And the most interesting things about it is the answers to that discovery are always so surprising. It continues to surprise the shit out of it. Okay, and excuse me, I'm still a Marine sometimes, and much to her chagrin, and it's always it's there, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss the next miracle. So I tend to keep coming back, but I do get, you know, and usually that's an internal thing. Sometimes it's about where I'm at that day. It's not really about the meetings, you know. So anyway, was there something else in there? Was there 2 questions in there? Was there another one?
I think you guys kind of got it. The other part was the part that Carole spoke to about feeling safe. Well, I guess maybe for you also, was that the feeling for you when you were able to settle in?
Yeah, it was towing at first. You know, I put my foot in the water. It was kind of just like going to meetings in the beginning, the vulnerability in the meetings. I'd see these other people be vulnerable, and I'd say, they did that, and nothing happened, and they got away with it. So stick my toe in the water, you know? And it was kind of like that. It was kind of like we were both hiding and watching each other in the beginning. Okay, it was kind of like, okay. Because I thought, you know, I kind of knew where she came from and she knew where I came from. And I expected her to dump me and go find some abusive guy. Okay. I did, because that's the pattern, you know. Oh, she's got to go find some guy that is going to be abused. I was waiting for her to, you know, and so I was totally prepared to be abandoned, okay? And she would run off with the first guy that would punch her or something, you know? So I thought like that, you know, but I guess we were ready for that kind of safety and comfortable in the safety, and we were able to appreciate it. Because I was safe being, telling her who I was. And it was incremental, I would say. And I was ready to run. And I think she was too, probably. Both of us were ready in the starting blocks. As soon as this guy screws up, I'm out of here, you know, or something like that. So anyway.
Thank you. We do have quite a few people wanting to ask questions, or share. So if you do want to share or ask a question, please raise your hand and you'll be called on. Right now we have Angela, and I'm going to unmute you. Your turn, honey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Geno and Carole. I really enjoyed this workshop today. I'll be getting ready to get off in a few minutes. But I just want to ask both of you all a question, and because I am also a recovered alcoholic and also in the program of Codependent Anonymous. And do you think, because both of you all are in a program, working a program, you both have sponsors, you're both sponsors, and you both have a God of your understanding in your life, and you're keeping that garden of your understanding in your life in the center of your relationship, is contribute to making you all relationship work out the way it is working out. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I had a relationship similar to you all, and real grateful. Yeah, I was real grateful, and I learned a lot from them. I'm not in that relationship now, and it's all because the other person decided to step out and sway away from the program and sway away from what he was supposed to be doing, drifting away from his primary purpose, and which was to help another person. So that kind of took him on out, and that relationship dissolved, you know, but I kept on the path. So do you think, because that both of y'all are in a program together and you both know what your primary purpose is, and you both have a God in your life, and that's what's making your relationship so successful?
Yes.
You know, Angela, it says that all we need is a desired happiness. And I was willing to do whatever that took. As far as a higher power, I can't say it enough that I can't do this on my own. I recognized a long time ago I have limitations, big time. That's not so for higher power. All things are possible with God. All things. I truly believe that, Angela. And so he's driving my bus, you know what I mean.
I would like to, I think the program that we share, you know, the 12-step principles, so to speak, are integral to this relationship, because we're both, you know, me with my alcoholism and drug addiction past, and all my stuff from Vietnam, and all those things. We have, from this program, we have a common language.
Yes.
We have words that I didn't use before. Did you ever hear the word issues before? I remember I never heard issues, you know, and I came into recovery and they said, I kept hearing agenda and issues and shit like that. And people say, Geno, you got issues. What's an issue? You know, those kind of things, that kind of language. We have common language, that words that are specific about particular things. Boundaries. Whoever said the word boundaries before? You know, and if she says, I want to set a boundary, that means she's going to tell me who she is. Doesn't mean, you know, I know what that means. And that sort of thing makes the communication and the intimacy. Which intimacy is the whole deal. I believe, for me, is I'm safe to, and intimacy to me isn't some kind of hormonal thing, okay? Intimacy is me being me.
That's right.
And letting you see me be me.
That's
and
right.
I can do that. More here than I can anywhere. Okay? And that's something to hang on to. That's it.
Thank you so
Answer?
much. Yes, that's a good answer for me. I know that for me, I know that, and I just talk about Angela, that God has to come first. That has to come first in my life. You know, that I have to have a relationship with Him. And, you know, and I've learned that, without a relationship with Him, there's no relationship, you know, for me. I'm not talking about me now, you know. So thank y'all so much. I've learned a lot today, and I'll continue on my journey also. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, Miriam, you'll be next. I'm unmuting you.
Hi, Miriam, Codependent. Thank you so much for everything you're saying today. And I guess I just would love to hear what you both would say about how advice or thoughts about if you're still in a relationship, your partner is an alcoholic, has gone through recovery, but is back to drinking. Just curious your thoughts, because it does sound like you both progressed through these programs kind of together, and it sounds like you weren't controlling in that process. And so I'm just kind of curious what your thought process was around that.
I know for me, Miriam, I cannot live with active alcoholism. I can't. I think I've progressed to the point where I recognize my limitations, that if I'm around someone who's very ill, I become very ill. I'm sure my husband will say that. And then I lose a sense of who I am. And my codependency becomes such that confusion reigns. Fear rises up in me, all kinds of things. And so I can say I can't live with it, and I do what I can to move out of it. And another thing my husband taught me, and I stick to it, change the changeable, accept the unchangeable, and remove yourself from the unacceptable. And those are words to live by for me.
Let me say something about alcoholism, at least from my experience. I know it's not AA here, but I've had my struggles. I mentioned that I had the PTSD stuff before, and I've been in recovery since 1982, and I've had 2 relapses in that period, one after 17 years and another one 12 years later because of that stuff. Now, they weren't long, and she didn't immediately run off, like that. And but I knew, I didn't come back in. I didn't get out of the relapse situation because of her. I did it for me. But I I know that if there's nothing, like she said, if it's, how is this for you? How is it going? How are you doing with this? And don't answer me, okay? You ask yourself that, like I would do. How is this for me? And is this situation in my highest good? Is somebody dealing with their issues, or are they expecting you to deal with them and maintain and keeping the issue, I guess? And I know I'm maybe talking out of turn. I don't want to tell you what to do. And but you can ask yourself a question: is there light at the end of the tunnel, or is it a truck? You know what I mean? And
I want to add this, Miriam. Because I attend open AA meetings, which I love, Al-Anon, Codependence Anonymous, I have befriended, and I can safely say that a lot of the people in AA are like family to me. So when he was in trouble, which his relapse was not very long, I had people I could call on. And they were here and within 5 minutes to say, something's not right, I need your help. I had 3 people here once. And just knowing I have that resource available is a godsend. And they did what they had to do to get their brother on board. So I would highly recommend that to anybody, is to get to know the beautiful people that are in AA.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Deepak, I'm going to unmute you. You're next.
Hi, Deepak Codependent. Thank you so much, Carole, for your share. I got so much from it.
speak up, please.
Hi, Deepak Codependent. Thank you so much, Carole, for your share. I got so much from it. And Geno, it's always good to hear you. I've heard this the second time I'm hearing you now. I have a question, and it's based on relationships. I mean, knowing what you know now, if, let's say, you put yourself out there, either of you, for a relationship, would you look to date someone in recovery or outside of recovery? Or even if they're not in recovery, someone who's doing some kind of inner work on themselves, some self-discovery? Thank you.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. Well, being nearly 75, I'm not likely to get into another relationship, but it certainly helps to recognize we have limitations. I would like to know if they have a higher power in their life, or are they their higher power? I would be curious about the relationships they have, the friendships that they have, because there's this one thing that's been proven over and over to me over the course of my recovery. If you have bad friendships, they're going to drag you down. And bad associations, as they say, spoil useful habits. And so I would take note of that. I would take note of and listen. You know, that was another thing. I didn't listen very carefully. Listen to how someone expresses themselves. How much of themselves do they reveal, or how much do they hold back? Because people do tell you who they are. And as Maya Angelou says, believe them the first time. And beat feet if there's someone that is revealing them to be unacceptable. What have you got?
All right. Wow, I haven't thought about that too. The same thing as like Carole said. I don't think they would have to. I don't think they would have to be in the program or anything. I know when I got with Carole, I wasn't aware of any program that she was in at all. You know, I didn't say, okay, or what are your 12-step credentials? You know, I didn't do any of that stuff. But however, there are certain traits that people have that you don't have to have the program to get them. You know, it helps. I mean, if you don't, you can learn them there. But I often think that maybe if somebody was emotionally available and knew how to set boundaries already, maybe they grew up in a family that was like whatever that is, normal or whatever the hell that is. I don't know. But you know, they would have that. It's about the functional traits. Okay, I do think that the program does give, like I mentioned before, and the other question was that the program does provide language that we both can share, and a common language that helps us understand each other, and within the realm of the program and things like that. But I wouldn't say you have to be in the program for any relationship. You just have to be caring and you know, caring person, and accepting and authentic. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you
that
so
helps.
much. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepak. We always love having you on. Thank you for tuning in. Okay. Rena, it's your turn.
Rena.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's up, Rena?
Rena?
Yes, I'm sorry, technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Hello to everyone from every corner of the world. Sounds like that is really, really cool. This has been really, really soul filling for me, and I am truly grateful for this. My question for both of you guys, Carole and Geno, what tools have you used to work through the need to be right and to tell your part of the story, to set the things straight with people? In other words, you know, you make sure that you fight and this is not what happened and that's not what I said, and then you said that and this, and so that's kind of where I'm at currently. So I'd really like to hear, especially the need to let go of the need to be right. Thank you both.
You want to go first or me?
No, you.
Me.
Think about that.
Carol's going to think about it a minute. I guess we're talking about conflict resolution, or how to approach it, differences. Okay, first thing is, I cannot come out of anger. Once I start coming out of anger, I can come out of irritation and be okay. But once I get angry, I'm not real good at taking all the things into consideration. But letting go of the need to be right was an important thing. And when I would say things, like if I had to say something to her, I try to use I messages as opposed to, don't use the word you. All right? Because once somebody says you to me and kind of like pointing a finger, my ears close up, you know, and I get defensive, and I'm wanting to win. Okay? What part of the things about being right, wanting to be right, the desire to be right, for me, it's a competitive desire to win, and not be wrong, and not be the bad guy. Okay, and once I understand that there are no bad guys in this thing with me and her, there are no bad guys. It's just us trying to find out what each of our truths are, and if I can get there with that. Okay, and sometimes it doesn't come right away. All this stuff we talk about is not like happens all the time. We got to work at it. We got to be reminded to. I have to be reminded. Sometimes I remind myself. Sometimes she reminds me, or I got to remind her. Different things like that, to get us back to where we're going for the real, for the reality of the truth outside of our baggage. Okay. We all have baggage that we as Carole once says, everything that happens, everything that somebody says, I tend to attach my story to that, my narrative. Okay, and that's not reality. That comes from West Philadelphia, okay, or Vietnam, or something like that. All right, and that's my childhood survival stuff. I have to get back into being an adult, approaching this like an adult, and keeping in mind I do have a commitment to this. Okay, and my commitment is to us is my commitment to truth, and that is where the love lies. It's in our truth. Okay, that's it.
You know, I'm glad I had a minute or two to think about that, because for me, it's not really being competitive where I have to be right and somebody else is wrong. It's more, I'm coming from a place where I want to be understood. And, you know, I'm a woman. I'm soft. And Geno is a Marine. And sometimes he has very colorful language and what I would call rough around the edges. And sometimes I say, Geno, we need to talk. And, you know, that colorful language has rubbed off on me sometimes, but I will say a well-placed F-bomb goes a long way. But not to him.
Oh.
When you're angry. But you know, I'm a feeler. It's important that he understands my feelings, my thinking. How what he does or says impacts me. And by the grace of God, he understands. Is it his intuition? I think it's his love for me. I understand oftentimes where he's coming from. And so that's what, it's not a competition when you're in a relationship. It's understanding someone's heart, what they're trying to accomplish. And for me, it's to be understood and to understand. And that's it.
There's something about the F word that I just love. Oh, okay. I think that was, let me unmute. Rena, was
That's
that?
a yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, honey. Veronica. I'm gonna try to unmute. Oh.
Okay, my question is, what is that I need to do or take in mind to make things work than to become codependent or fall in a pattern of codependency?
Sorry, I didn't. Did you get that?
Making things work, is that what you said, Veronica?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What is it that I need to do, taking in mind to make things work than to become codependent or fall in a pattern of codependency?
Well, I think the
Like,
first thing
instead
you
of
need
falling
to,
in a codependency pattern, what is it?
I think for me, it was to learn about what codependency looked like in my life. What was I doing? The steps, going through the steps, reveal that to me. How it expressed itself. Where did it come from? Why do I do it? How could I change? It gets back to getting a sponsor, working the steps, and knowing yourself. Then with that ammunition, you're in a better position to make some concrete changes in your life. As far as making relationships work, I don't get people to do, because then I'm in get mode, and get mode is control mode. You don't make anything happen. God makes things happen. And once you digest that and make it your reality, then things fall into place. How about you?
I think that, as I understand what we're talking about here, the codependent behaviors, the codependency as it expressed himself in my life, it's a journey that I'm continually discovering new ways to do those same characteristics. I mean, I'm still codependent in a lot of ways. I know that a lot of times I catch myself, my mood, my serenity is sometimes dependent on what's going on with her. Okay? I can find, if she gets upset about something that doesn't have a damn thing to do with Geno, but the fact that, you know, hypervigilant to other people's feelings and take them on and all that stuff, I get in this, sometimes I'll get in a mode to wanting to fix it. And I gotta let her be her, you know. Sometimes I'm not sure where I end and she begins emotionally. Okay, and that's part of my codependency. This stuff hasn't gone away. Okay, it's just that I'm aware of it and I can circumvent it and add the principles that I've learned of self-esteem, self-worth, spirituality, all those things that the steps revealed to me and put in my head that I have to constantly renew all the time. I'll see that going on and then I'll start applying that. Different type of self-talk, different type, challenging my belief systems. I don't need to fix her, you know. And where part of me says, you got to do something about that, or you're going to feel bad, or I'm dependent on her to feel okay, you know. No, you're not. This goes on. No, you're not, Geno. You know, you don't do that. You know, you're dependent on you and your higher power to get through this, whatever it is. You know, it's not, that's her deal. And she always takes care of herself eventually. I trust her to take care of herself. I trust her to not blame me for her own stuff and all that stuff. I just have to go through the mental exercises when I'm drifting into codependency. I hope that's where you were going with that question. But that's what I got from it. So that's it. Thanks. Hope that helps.
Okay. Carole, are you willing to put your phone number and email out there, or?
I will certainly put my email out, and since we can't always depend on my voice, you know,
Okay.
I don't know about my phone number.
Okay. All right. So how about we get your, if you could put that into the chat box, that'd be great for your email. And next we have Michelle K.
Thanks, guys. It's Michael.
Michael. Oh, Michael, I'm sorry, honey.
It's okay. It's quite all right. It's my name in French. Carole and Geno, thank you so much. It's a joy. It's a real joy and a privilege to be present with you guys in this setting. So, and actually, of course, it figures that my question, Geno, you kind of just talked about a little bit, but for me, my codependence comes out when I was a little boy. Because I think my mother was really unhappy, I determined that it was going to be my job to make everybody happy. And it's something that I've dragged forward into my adulthood. My question is it's around rescuing and fixing. Was there ever a time with you two guys where you would have the rescuing and fixing issue come up? And if so, how did you address it? How did you work around it? How did you get past that? And I guess you just answered my other question, because I was going to say, do you run into that situation now? But if you could just speak to it a little bit more, I think it would be helpful for me. Thanks.
Again, Okay. Or I'm going out. I'm taking a chance now here. When we first got together, as you, those of you who know us know that I'm extroverted and Carol's introverted in our personality types. Okay, so I'm very talkative, and this is the only example I can think of, and she's not as much. And so when we were first, we were going to meetings for a while, and it's probably close to 15 years ago, something maybe. And a lot of times I noticed that Carole was didn't like to speak in front of people a lot back then, and so she would ask me to do the talking for her. Okay, and of course I would comply, right? And then I remember one time I thought, wait a minute, you know, this was before her voice went to hell. This is when she was, you know, always had her voice complete with New York accent, right? And so I remember she said, would you make this announcement for me in the meeting? I don't know if you remember this or not. And I said, no, well, you could do it. You make the announcement. And she stomped her feet and stomped off and walked into the other room, right? She wanted me to do it, right? And I remember immediately after, okay, I'll do it. You know, I immediately caved, okay, to fix her because she was slightly angry with me. And I just, you know, my fear of abandonment, all that fear would come back. And then thankfully she said, no, I can handle it. And then she started doing it. But we had that kind of, that sort of dependent things like that at first, until we worked it out. We would hear about that stuff in meetings, and I would hear about it, and I would think, hey, man, that's kind of a triangulation thing. Let's not do that, things like that. And we would have to confront them as we figured out what was going on, and kind of get over it. I know that was one of my biggest examples. I remember because I talked about it at a meeting after that I said I immediately had set sort of a boundary and said, well, I think you could do that, you know, I don't, you know, and then immediately caved after that. Unfortunately, she said, no, I can do this, and figured it out. But I noticed there were many times that I had done stuff like that just to kind of, it's my peace at all costs kind of compulsion, okay, as opposed to, you know, stating a boundary of some sort and saying this is where I'm at.
Hi, Michael. Well, for me, early on, as I think back on looking back at my behaviors, I would talk and talk and talk and plead and beg, and don't you see the error of your way, and talk and talk and more talk. And the person on the other end just tuned me out. And I got to a point where I was talked out. I couldn't talk anymore. I was done. And that talking really masked a lot of control. And so I had to stop the talking and let the person be who they are. I'm currently doing that, as I said in my share with my son and my daughter. At their age, I don't have any control. At their age, they're on their own path and I am on my path. It may be that we come together, maybe not. But to add on to what my husband said, you know, I had to find a workaround when I don't have a voice, because it's real easy to say, Geno, could you make that phone call for me? You know, to sign it to him, or could he do A, B, and C and D? No, I had to find a way to take care of myself. And well, how do you make a phone call when you can't talk? So by the grace of God, I hooked up with the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And that too, in this state, opened up a whole world of resources for me. And they signed me up for Sprint. And they have a relay service. And if I have to call my dentist, I can do that. I utilize that resource. So I'm forced to rely on myself, and that's an exercise in self-care. So these little things are going to come up in your course of recovery, things where you catch yourself doing codependent things, and do the right thing. Once you have the awareness, take the acceptable action, and that's what I do.
I'll add something else that she did one time. This is quite a few years ago. I had just come back from the gym, and my heart was acting funny. It kept beating real fast and everything like that. And it was during a time when she didn't have a voice, and she did the TTY thing and called an ambulance and everything like that, where I could go to the hospital and get checked out and get looked at. So she, by doing that, was I'm glad she did. She did learn how to do that stuff because it.
He had an 85% blockage in his heart, so yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff. So I'm glad she did that. I just thought about that. I thought, wow, I'm glad that I remember thinking that back then. It'd been too damn bad if I had to make that phone call. So anyway, hope that answers your question, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody else want to share or have a question for Carole and Geno? Whitney P., can you raise your hand? I can't find you, Whitney. Let me see.
I unmuted you, Whitney.
Did she? Okay. Did you? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Carole, you were saying that toxic friendships, negative friendships can really bring you down.
Yes.
I'm new to the program. I started in January. So some of my recovery has been during this pandemic. Don't have a sponsor yet. And I'm basically still on the first step. So, but I have an awareness. I have a therapist that I've been seeing for 2 years every week who, helped bring me to CODA. And what I'm finding is that I'm examining my friendships more and really seeing some of my older friendships, especially people I've known for 20, 25 years that I'm fiercely loyal to, are not positive forces in my life. And it really breaks my heart. And I don't know how I'm going to move forward with those or make boundaries within those relationships. So I was wondering if you had any insight.
Wow, boundaries. I think that was my favorite go-to awareness. I had no clue what a boundary was, what it should look like in my life. And so I ventured on a search. I read everything I could. I bought books, I read things online, and I was determined to express appropriate boundaries in my life. And as Geno shared, it wasn't telling somebody what to do. It was acknowledging that I had rights and that I had a right to be seen and heard, and that I had a right to map out my life that worked for me, because the way I was living life was not working for me. It was not working for me. And to, as they say in our workbook, boundaries make our life manageable. I needed that desperately. And I too had to let go of relationships that were toxic. And as I've shared, honestly, my 2 adult children are in desperate need of a program, of professional help. I can't do that. I wish I could, but I can't. So I've had to utilize boundaries. So my suggestion is, and the reason why boundaries began to work is because I was worthy of setting a boundary. So it got back to my self-esteem. To say I was a doormat, a mousy kind of woman, yeah, that was all true. Anything goes, anything to make you happy. that wasn't working for me, because inside I was on like a slow boil, ready to, the tea kettle was about to explode. So the easier, softer way, the more respectful way for me was to take care of myself and treat myself with some dignity and respect. And then I became worthy of having boundaries. We are all worthy of having boundaries. And it's not being mean, it's being healthy. And I desperately needed healthy. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
My question was for, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my question was for Carole. My mom is in the meeting. She's also a codependent. She has 4 kids, and she experiences rejection from 2 of them. 2, actually 2.5, I would say. Obviously, the rejection of a child is one of the most unnatural things that can happen to a human being. What advice can you give her in terms of how to manage it, how to manage her feelings, how to address her emotions, and fix her inner dialogue in regards to, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy of their attention, or I have to follow them, or I have to call them, I have to originate every interaction. I'm desperately wanting to have this relationship, because if I don't get this in my life, she goes into these depression loops, and obviously suicidal thoughts and all that comes with those huge loops of depression, because she doesn't have anybody else to rely on. She doesn't have a husband, she's not in a relationship, she lives in a house by herself. So what type of advice can you give her as a mother to make her feel a little bit better?
Well, there's something I learned in Al-Anon many years ago. Q-tip: quit taking it personally. Quit taking it personally. Our children and ourselves have a right to have different point of view, different perspectives. Remember earlier I shared to accept what people are, and our children are people. They're damaged despite our best efforts, just as we are damaged, and we're all trying to find our way. I'm glad your mom recognizes that she's codependent, because working the steps will help her to see things in a healthier perspective. It is a deep wound, but it's one where our higher power brings us to for a reason. For me, because it revealed the level of dysfunction I was living with, that I thought, well, I was so self-sacrificing. But I was modeling very sick behavior because I was participating in a dysfunctional relationship. And so they grew up amongst chaos. It wasn't my fault. It's what I knew. It wasn't his fault because it was what he knew. And the children grow up with those wounds. And as I've heard my husband say, I have a stepson who's actively drinking. And I've heard him say, I may be responsible for the interesting genetics that you have, but you are responsible for the solution. We're all responsible for the solutions in our lives. That includes my adult children. It will include their children. And so it goes. That's just the way it is. And I've learned, I'd like to say I learned, my children are not my higher power. They're not. And very often we come to the table as parents and thinking we have this image of motherhood where we're all sacrificing and we put the nails on the crucifix. No. I believe we need to teach our children that we are all worthy of self-respect, and dignity, and treating each other that way. Just because I'm their mother, it doesn't mean that I have to grovel for a relationship with them. No, no, thank you. I adhere to relationships where we are equals. They're not my little children anymore. They are adults, and we can treat each other as equals. And that's what I think is the healthier way for both concerned. It's painful, but we will experience discomfort as we work through the steps. There's no doubt about it. But there's a lot to be gained. You have something to say?
Me? Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking. I know you didn't ask me, but a lot of times this, like we'll talk about, I have a kid that I'm kind of estranged from, right? And not kinda, I am. I haven't spoken to him in months, okay? And there's a thing that, you know how people say this, you know, so-and-so, they just push my buttons, you know? They push my buttons. You know? Well, I used to think, okay, if somebody's pushing your buttons, you get rid of that pusher. God damn it, get rid of him, right? What I found out the first thing to do is to not get rid of the pusher, is to get rid of the damn buttons. Get rid of the buttons, and then you can make a decision about what's to do. And I also found that there comes a time when you can, when there's people that I can have in my heart and always keep them in my heart, but not have them in my life. Okay? And that's got to be, my life is not dependent on others. Okay? It's enhanced sometimes by others or given vibrancy and everything by the diversity of somebody else in my life. But my life is not, and my well-being is not dependent on that. Okay, there's a self-sufficiency I've learned in recovery that if Carole comes in tomorrow and says, you know what, I'm running off with the landscaper and Umberto, and we're going to San Jose, and to hell with you, Baldy, or something like that, okay? I would be hurt, but I know that I'm going to be okay. I know that I'm okay because I learned how to be okay with me. And it was the same thing. I don't need my son to complete me as a person. He can enhance it, or he can either be a positive thing in my life or a detriment in my life. And right now, he can't do anything but be a detriment. Okay, and so I have to look at that, and it's a way of me doing some self-care, because I've learned the hard way of trying to keep that guy in my life when he's active. It's not a good thing for me, and I just really. Like I say, when I allow really folks that are in a bad way in my life, I'm not healthy enough to just detach. I start getting sick with them, okay? And I have to realize that. I know my limitations. I am not capped in recovery, although I like to think I am sometimes, but I don't have a cape, and I don't fly around and totally bulletproof from that stuff.
You know, I will say that it would be helpful if your mom would look at closely and honestly what her beliefs are about being a mother, especially to our adult children. That's something I spend a lot of time on. That would be helpful.
Thank you. Okay, T.
Hi, Carole and Geno. I'm T. I have been in recovery from codependency for 31 days now, and my life is changing so much for the better. I thank you both so much for being so honest and open and transparent in your sharing of your experiences with us today. You really give me hope. Every romantic relationship that I have ever had has been unhealthy. And now that I'm learning more about myself and my codependency, I understand why. And I have always held on too long in bad situations. And after a failed 16-year marriage, I actually was afraid to date because I felt like I couldn't trust myself for choosing a partner because of the experiences that I had in my marriage. And so for a while, I said, I'm done with men. I'm going to be by myself for a long time. And I had a therapist who encouraged me to challenge that thought process. And so I put myself back out there to try again after a while. And I found myself in another unhealthy relationship where I felt like I was worse. I felt like my love addiction was worse than even in my marriage. And when I reflect now on the relationship that I ended a little over a month ago, and I look back at how I poured myself into that man and how I never felt like it was fully received or reciprocated, and I stayed in it, and I was hurting, I was in pain, I was not satisfied, I was not fulfilled. And so I have made the commitment to myself to take some time for the first time in my life to focus on loving me, my healing, recovery, learning myself. And I've given myself a minimum of 6 months commitment to myself before I even think about going out with somebody. But I have to say that, and I'm fine with that, I'm comfortable with me, spending time with me and my new Coda family is fine, it's fulfilling for me. In the back of my mind, I think, well, when my 6 months is up or a year is up, you know, how do I know that I'm really ready? And so I just wanted to ask you, when the two of you began dating, would you say that that was the first relationship that was like the healthy experience type of relationship? And how did you feel comfortable that, okay, you know, I'm at a good place in my recovery where that's a good idea to kind of get out there again?
Hi, T. I did the exact same thing. I left a long-term marriage, got into another sicker relationship, and the common denominator was me. And bravo for you for taking care of yourself. When I dated Geno for 2 years before we decided to get married, and it felt right. It felt good. I felt safe. I still had a lot of work to do on myself. I continue to work on myself. But there was just a feeling of equality, safety, friendship. I didn't have to hide. I didn't have to comply. He didn't make demands on me. He was a man that I could respect, that I could laugh with. And more importantly, I didn't have to, I could share my life with him, not take it. I could share what I could bring to the table with another human being. That was critical. I could share who I was. It could be appreciated. I could be appreciated for what I bring to the house. I'm an old-fashioned Italian mama. You know, I like to cook and clean house, and that's okay with me. And it was okay for him too. How about you, Jimmy?
Okay. I think that, okay, I after my, I feel like I'm going to sneeze here in a minute. After I got that second marriage, it was a total shit show. And that was somebody that was also in recovery as well. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Just because somebody's in recovery doesn't mean that, you know, that they're going to be okie dokie and everything like that. There's all different kinds of folks in recovery, okay? And I was kind of naive at the time. I suspect that I was 13 stepped. Okay, God damn it. And at any rate, what happened was after that thing, the good news is I got out of it quick, okay? And quick, within just a few years, okay? It wasn't a long-term thing. One thing about, like you mentioned, it's about codependence. I noticed that, and most people, alcoholics do this too. If you put a codependent in a rut, they never climb out. They'll just decorate, okay? They'll just move shit around and try and think that that'll make it better and stuff like that. So I did that for a while in that second marriage. I was decorating a lot, you know, buying lots of art and hanging on different sides of the rut and everything like that. And of course that didn't, you know, and it imploded and all that like it was supposed to. And after that, I went for, I think, almost a year without dating, okay, to try and build a relationship with myself. Because what I discovered that while I was always running around looking for Ms. Right, going from this one to that one to try to find it right. Oh, that's the wrong one, God damn it. I made a mistake again. I'll just find the right one around the corner and she is going to fix my ass for sure, okay? And so I was doing that. What I discovered was that Mr. Wrong was conducting the search, okay? Mr. Wrong was conducting the search. So once I started working on me, and it was slow because after I come out and started dating again, I was still finding people who wanted to murder me and things like that, and for a while, and but you know, I didn't stay because when I did that time alone, I got comfortable with myself, and so I wouldn't stay in it with one just because I didn't want to be alone. Okay, I would say, okay, this is good. I'm sorry. You can, you know, I'm sure you'll be fine if you find a straitjacket, and away I'd go. And I did that, and then I was, for a while, I thought, okay, I'm not going to find anybody. So I went out and I had a heart-to-heart with the higher power, and said, look, okay, dude, if you want me to be alone for the rest of my life, okay, Johto, that's fine with me. I'll do it because I'm pretty cool where I am right now. And after I kind of let go of that, Mrs. Garlic here showed up in my life, okay? And it wasn't long after that when I kind of did that thing. So it was sort of a, okay, now you know that it's not that, they don't complete you. Other people do not complete you, okay? I had to get complete for me and myself before I could accept that kind of health, I suppose, in my life. You know, before I could at least, you know, be attracted or unattracted. I think there's I guess they call it a law of attraction or something. And once I get where I was more okay with me and thought that I was worth it, things started happening to reflect that. Because I believe that all my relationships and all that stuff that I had in my life was a direct reflection of the most dysfunctional relationship I ever had, which is the one I have with Geno. Okay? So if once that started getting good, the other stuff started getting better. Et voila.
Oof. Thanks, T. Okay, so we have about 15 more minutes. We've got Frank with his, I'm going to unmute you, Frank. You there?
I'm here. Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the workshop. I love it. That last part about the Mr. Wrong that was really, really good. I had a question for you guys on conflict. Geno mentioned conflict, that conflict helps us and couples are supposed to have conflict. Do you guys have any examples of like really difficult conflict that you guys have overcome in your relationship, or other people you've sponsored, or anybody that has had really difficult conflict to overcome, and then what they've learned from the conflict, or how they overcame it?
Well, I'll share one that happened today. I wouldn't say it was a big conflict, but one of the things that frequently happens is I'm very long-winded. I give all the details of a story. And Geno gets impatient with that. Come on, get to the point. Get to the point. What are you going to say? And so my feelings were getting hurt. And so he went out on his hike, and I already had the dialogue all planned out that I was going to tell him, Geno, we need to talk. And he said, okay, well, what are we going to talk about? And I said, I think you need to exercise a little more patience with me when I'm explaining myself. And he said, yes, I agree with you. And I said, do you think that, I asked him, do you think people have to abandon themselves and become somebody else to make you comfortable? And he said, well, that depends. And with his quick wit, he said, well, if you told me to make you comfortable, I needed to wear a toupee, I wouldn't do it. So immediately he brings some humor to it, which immediately gets me off my high horse. And I even forget how we resolved it. But the point of the whole thing was, he said, don't worry about it. I know how to take care of myself. And that's the balance of the program, that if there's conflict, he's open to hearing what I have to say. But if it means he has to abandon himself, he won't do that, nor will I. See, I needed to talk about it. And we come to this resolution that's peaceful. There's no conflict. Neither one of us abandoned ourselves. I got the chance to express myself. There are functional ways to do this. You learn that in recovery. You learn how to communicate. So, did you want to add something?
In rebuttal, I'd like to say, now, seriously, I think that, I'll tell you how conflict works. What it does, Frank, how I think it works for us, okay? And I think it's like I said, conflict is normal. What is the most difficult thing about conflict is functional resolution of the conflict, okay? And like I said, that if it becomes like who's going to win, hang it up, or like we say in the Marine Corps, hang it in your wall locker. It's not going to happen, okay? But if you're looking for the truth, if you're looking for the honest truth, and it means without winning, without somebody being one up, if it's an equal truth, which is good for both. What she was doing in the thing when we came back was to tell me who she was. She was telling me who she was and telling me that when she sees this kind of behavior, this is how she experiences it, okay? And so when I mentioned in the beginning when I was talking about things that are required to work in relationships, my empathy, I tried to empathize with that and tried to be in her shoes in doing that. You know, and even though I don't act like it, I'm sensitive, maybe overly, okay? And I know what it feels like to be hurt. And I don't want to be the person that does that. So, because if I do things that, and listen to this, one of the things I learned is if somebody did something like some of the things I've done, I wouldn't like them, okay? I would not like that person. So if I see myself doing things that I wouldn't like in other people, what do you think that means? I think that means that I'm not going to be I don't like myself. So I don't want to do things that, not just because they hurt her, but because sometimes that stuff hurts me when I do that. And I'm done doing that shit, you know? I've got a lot of wreckage in my past, and I'm trying to, even this was a small, minor thing, it's representative of a lot of stuff. And I don't mean giving up, and like I said, giving up who I am to make her feel okay. But, you know, for me to be patient, I mean, is that a big deal? To be more patient with her? I know I'm impatient. You know, I overemphasize my own importance to myself, okay, a lot of times. Okay. And I have to understand that there's other people that in my life with me. And sometimes I forget that. And so I have to, you know, and like I told her, if there's something I'm doing and she wants to talk to me for like ever, and which she does, and I'll have to say, okay, let me finish this first, and then we can talk about that, you know, because if it interrupts something, then I get butthurt about it, and then I don't want to do it. Then I'll get a resentment, and that way I don't have to compromise myself to be in this partnership. So that's what it is. It's not me winning or her winning. It's us winning. And that's the thing that I have to try and work on. Did that help?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. For sure. Yep. Thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you, Frank. And we have John and Chris. My goodness, I miss you too.
Sweetheart.
Hi.
Missy.
Hi.
Missy.
Where are you?
I'm in my room.
Okay, there you
Hi,
are.
sweetheart.
I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to tell you I've laughed so hard. You guys are hysterical. And you're so brave to be that way and to just, you know, be so transparent and to have those feelings that make you cry. And mine is really just gratitude right now. Because I love you guys and you help me so much.
We love you too.
Thanks, honey. We love you too. Where's Johnny?
He's here.
There he is, goddamn. Hey, John.
Yeah.
We love you too.
Carole, thank you.
We love you too. It's
Thank
because of
you.
your
Love you
haircut.
guys. I'm losing more. I don't have to even get them cut anymore.
Welcome to my world.
Thank you, guys.
Sure thing,
You're
Johnny.
the best.
Miss you guys.
Hey,
Miss
Christina.
you.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody else have any questions, comments? Would you like to share a burning desire or share?
I have something. I saw a lot of, just something real quick. I noticed there was a lot of things on the chat line, like to me or to Carole or something, and we haven't been able to look at any of that, all those chats that had specific things to us, like asking us this and asking us that. So I'm sorry if I didn't respond, because I can't hardly chew gum and walk, let alone type and talk and stuff like that. So.
There were no specific questions. It was just a lot of, you know, thank you so much for your honesty, or I can really relate to that. You know, you can scroll through and read it.
Okay.
But if there were actual questions, we got them asked.
Okay, good. Thanks, Linda.
Sure.
So I have a question, Christina Codependent. I'm also Italian, and I grew up with a lot of similar stories. And my mother is the 100% Italian, and she's always tried to change everybody into being Italian and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you guys named Geno or made him like made his name a nickname to be more Italian?
It's possible.
If I start speaking in food metaphors, you'll know she did. People tend to do that anyway. People have called me Geno a lot, but she does, I think, just because of the Mediterranean influence. But I don't think she wants me to be Italian. She appreciates my Irishness.
Not my
Italian men.
She does not accept the part of me that's Irish, but she is a hardcore Italian, and she also does that. She's like, just remember that the percentage of you, the best part of you is the Italian part, and so she's very territorial over that. And I'm like, no, I'm Irish. I love being Irish, and she just rolls her eyes. And yeah, I've got a very Italian mother. Oh, I often thought about that over the years of knowing you guys, and I'm like, I bet that's because, you know.
No, you know, Christina, when I met him, as I said, we worked for the same company. Everyone called him Geno.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't give him that name.
No, people just, Gene, instead of, well, all of it's better than Eugene, which is my name, which is, you ever notice that the guy in the movies that's a nerd with the pocket protector and all the pens and the pants up there, he's always named Eugene. So I have a resentment about that. I just thought I'd say that, just to get that out of the way,
Right.
But, no, she doesn't, she's very Italian though.
In fact, when we were
Mamma mia.
When we were first married, and he came home, and I was cooking, of course. Is our house going to smell like this all the time? Garlic? And then he said, I never knew there were so many different kinds of pasta.
I mean, there is. I mean, there's look like bow ties and stuff.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you something else, too, about these Italians. I talked about food metaphors. She does that a lot. She would, if she saw somebody with a big nose or something, she'd say, she doesn't say he's got a big nose. He's got a nose like an eggplant, okay? That's everything's with the food stuff. Yeah. It's very important. Yeah. I guess Irish is always about the booze or something. I don't know.
Right. And the Italian swear words and.
Oh yeah. I know a bunch of them now. We use them around the house. Our house is like multilingual with the cursing and everything.
Oh man.
Anyone else?
My tummy is. I can feel.
Any more ethnic questions?
I'm sorry, that had been nagging me for years. I just have to get it out.
That's fine.
Thank Carole and Geno once again. Yay!
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for thinking of us for this. And I appreciate you too, and I'm glad you guys are in my life. You are an enhancement to me, both you and Linda, and John and all the other folks on the event committee. And thanks again.
You're welcome. Yeah, we have a whole nother section of the committee that's just kind of in lull because there's positions that they're doing that are out in public, which we're not. It's just kind of crazy right now. So thank you, everybody. All of you guys. Everyone. You're welcome. And moment of silence with the wee version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity
to accept the things I cannot change,
The
courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Keep coming back. It works if you work it. So